If you want some easy desserts, here are 3 easy desserts that are pretty simple to make and that can surprise all your guests. Let's kick it off. This is not burnt, I swear. My feed on TikTok, YouTube, and every social media platform this past year has been flooded with pictures and videos of Basque Cheesecake. When you look at Basque Cheesecake, it has a burnt top, yet a pale bottom, with pale sides that are jiggly yet firm. So you're like, how do you do all this in one single cake? I'll be honest, this is actually one of the easiest desserts I've made ever. Let's do it. In a stand mixer, start with 3 blocks of cream cheese. Whip this until it's more smooth and light, and if the cream cheese isn't whipping, quickly put it in the microwave for 10 seconds. While the cream cheese is getting whipped, in a separate bowl, add some cream, some flour, vanilla extract, and mix this all together. Back to the stand mixer. While it's on low, add some eggs, sugar, and their cream mix. Let this go for a few minutes. Once the cheesecake mix is homogeneous or mixed well together, set aside and let's get the baking process started. This is the springform pan, and here's some parchment paper, which is super important. Parchment paper will help you separate the cake from the pan and get the iconic crinkle look on the outside. So parchment paper doesn't really fit into a circular tin, so cut a size a bit larger than your pan and then crumple it up. That's how you get that crinkle, and it will fit easier into the pan. Pour in your cheesecake mix and put this in the oven for 45 minutes on 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Here's the important step. Keep a close eye on the cake because it really matters. The top will burn and it'll get close to a very dark color. After 45 minutes, check the edges and the top and see if they're cooked. And if they are, then check your center. If the center is not cooked, put it back in the oven for 15 on 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And if it's cooked, take the whole pan out. Now that the cake is out, the product should be dark on the top, pale on the sides, and the center still jiggly. Let this rest in the pan for an hour. If you open it now, the cheesecake could spill out. After an hour, and here's why a springform pan is important, you can open the latch and have easy access to the cheesecake. I remove the parchment paper here and place it in the fridge for a few hours, and after those few hours, the cake is ready to be sliced. And here it is. The cake you've been seeing all over your feed, right in front of you. If you're an anti-crust cheesecake fan, this is the perfect cake. Regardless, it's creamy, jiggly, and not too sweet. It's good, and it can impress your guests. God, I love cinnamon rolls. So whenever my family hosted a party or attended one when I was younger, someone would always bring a pack of those Cinnabon cinnamon rolls. And I think I always enjoyed it since when I was younger, my family always, every time we went to the mall, would buy one before we left. Anyway, cinnamon rolls aren't as intimidating as you may think. Sure, you can get away with using canned cinnamon rolls for dessert, but making ones from scratch, you can control the sweetness, they're fluffy, they're gooey, you can add as much frosting as you want. These are perfect. There's a few parts of the cinnamon roll: the dough, the filling, and the frosting. Let's start with the dough. Heat up some whole milk in a microwavable cup until it's like 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It actually doesn't have to be that hot, but it has to be warm enough to activate the yeast. Stir in the yeast packet into the whole milk, and let's get the rest of the ingredients together. First, add the milk, then the sugar, an egg and an egg yolk, and some butter. Mix these ingredients together and then add the flour and salt. Mix with the dough hook setting until the dough forms together and it's sticky. It should come off easy from the hook. Alright, so I'm taking this dough and I have another bowl. In this other bowl, I'm oiling it with a neutral oil, like vegetable oil, and adding the dough to it. I'm gonna go over this with a towel to let it rise. And here's a tip. If you put this in your oven and then add a bowl of boiling or hot water, it'll get that oven to a temperature to help your dough rise faster. After a little more than an hour, it doubled and it is massive. I'm deflating it and setting this on a floured countertop to roll out. Roll this out as best as you can in a rectangle. I clearly did not. This is a circle. But here's the fun part. I'm spreading this really softened butter over the dough evenly. I'm getting close to the edge of the dough, but not quite there. And when the butter is spread evenly across the dough, I added a mix of brown sugar and cinnamon to a bowl. That mixture gets sprinkled evenly across the dough, so then I have a butter layer with cinnamon and brown sugar filling. With that done, now roll your dough. So start at one end and then roll across to the other side. When you finish that process, you'll notice you have thin ends and thick ends. Cut the thinner, uneven sides off, and then using a sharp knife or a bench scraper, cut the cinnamon rolls until you have a lot of even pieces. For my roll, I have 10, but if you have 8 or 12, that's fine. Set this in a tray with a layer of parchment paper in case things burn, and add the cinnamon roll pieces. And put this back in the oven for another 30 minutes. Okay, when you take this out, this rose a bit, but not too much. However, it's good enough for the oven. In the oven, start baking this at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes. And while this cooks, let's make our frosting. In a bowl, combine some cream cheese that's softened, some softened butter, powdered sugar, and some vanilla extract. When the cinnamon rolls finish in the oven, they should be golden brown. Let this cool for a few minutes and then add the frosting on top. Now, these cinnamon rolls are ready to eat. They're super warm, slightly sweet, and they go well with a cream cheese frosting. Fun fact, red velvet cake is a chocolate cake. So red velvet cake isn't necessarily a holiday treat, but because it's red, we might as well make it this time of the year. There's something to it that makes it taste different than a standard chocolate cake. It's probably the amount of cream cheese frosting we put on. Let's get it started. Alright, so let's start with the milk. Start with 2/3 a cup of whole milk and add 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Anyways, let this sit for a few minutes and then the milk will get all curdly and sour. In a bowl, I have a mesh strainer. We're gonna add a lot of our dry ingredients here, so you should use a mesh strainer to get the big dry clumps out. Add flour, cocoa powder, baking soda, and salt. Sift this out using your mesh strainer to remove any initial clumps. And now you have your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients prepared. Butter and sugar go into our little mixer to get whipped up for a few minutes. While it's mixing, I'm adding 1 egg, neutral oil, vanilla extract, and our curdled milk. I'm going to stop the mixture here and use a spatula to kind of scrape down the sides. After it goes going for another minute, I'm going to add our dry ingredients, like our flour, cocoa mix, and I'm going to keep it going. While it goes and mixes, I'm going to add red food coloring here since it's red velvet. Other recipes would recommend using 1 or 2 pans. I have 3 really small pans so I can make smaller red velvet cakes. I'm pouring these till halfway and then putting this in the oven at 350 for 35 minutes. While that cooks, let's make our cream cheese frosting. Similar to the cinnamon roll frosting, it goes butter, powdered sugar, heavy cream, and cream cheese, and a bit of vanilla extract. So when these red velvet cakes are ready, take them out of the oven and let them cool down for a bit. I did not do that, and I took them right out. And because I didn't let them cool for a bit, you'll see on this first cake, when I added the frosting, it got really, really melty. So I have our other 2 salvage cakes for presentation purposes, and I'm making a small 2-layer red velvet cake. After the frosting fiasco, I'm plating this and slicing into quarters, and here is our final result. It's fluffy, soft, very creamy with the frosting, and the best compliment, not too sweet. So whether you're still hosting or want to bring dessert to a holiday potluck, make any of these. Impress your guests with something simple like a Basque cheesecake that doesn't take that long to actually make, or some cinnamon rolls that you can flex on the, oh, I knew how to make dough from scratch. All of these taste amazing and they're great staples this holiday season. But before you attend the party, make sure you send me an invite.